Hey everyone. Hey to Matt and to James and to Roland. Got your guitar ready. Jeff McManus, good to see you, buddy. Trip Hindle. All right. Good. All right. Well, let me know that you can hear me okay. It's a little out of tune, but that's okay. We're playing good time rock and roll today. It's going to go in and out of tune today because it is really cold here. And so, I can't turn on the fan, the space heater, because it makes too much noise. And so I'm going to be freezing, like the Beatles on the roof. Okay, let's give this. I've got another camera, and it's not working. Let me try this. There we go. Maybe you can see a little bit better. I don't know. Hopefully you can hear. Haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to start playing, and you can let me know if you can't hear it. All right? We're going to start out with some good time rock and roll, and we'll see how it goes. All right. Okay. So good time rock and roll day today. Hey, I want to tell you that in case you didn't know about it, I'm going to be running a blues workshop clinic. It's 30-day transformation, and 30 days. You can sign up for just to be notified. There's a notification. It's in the description. I do it once a year. So I take 15 people, and it's a super high-touch course. It's not you get the course, but you also get like the lessons and the tabs and stuff like that. But you also get one-on-one interaction with me. You get weekly, actually bi-weekly meetings where you're meeting with the group and you're working on specific things. It's an intensive. It's definitely intensive. So if you're not up for really spending some time on it. It's really comprehensive. It's not just playing, it's also listening, so you're immersing yourself in the blues. It's made for a transformation. Anyway, 30-day blues transformation. If you're interested, click on the link in the description. Also, 10% off becoming a member today if you want to. And actually 10% off any of my courses today. So we're going to be playing some good time rock and roll. Sync. So the sync is off. Uh-oh. Maybe we'll have to quit. That's a bummer. So David, is the sync the sound? Is it the sound or is it the video? Please be clear. If it's the sound, I got to quit. because I can't fix that right now. So just let me know if it's the sound or if it's the what's off by 3 seconds. Both. Okay. So we're just going to have to stop today. I'm really sorry, folks. I'm really sorry. If the sync is off, we're just going to have to stop. I'll wait for some confirmation on that, and we can fix the loudness. That we can work with. But if the sync is off, then like it says 3 seconds off. So when I say something, you wait 3 seconds and you hear my lips move. Is that? And let's clarify it. Not for everyone. Okay, no sync issues. Good, good. Okay, good, good. Okay, so we'll turn down the guitar a little bit. Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about rhythm first, because rhythm is the key, and or the biggest key. So we're going to go close a little bit, and you know, I mean, good time rock and roll has that. You know what we're talking about here? We're talking about the Stones. We're talking about Black Crowes. We're talking about AC/DC. You know, that kind of stuff. And so much of good time rock and roll involves not going to the minor third, but going to the fourth, okay? And when I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So let's go close. Let's go close. So, you know, the sort of, I would say, not raunchier, but what's the sort of evil-sounding rock will sound like, you know, like... something's off a little bit there. There's the G string, yeah. You know, that kind of stuff. And what we're doing is we're going to the minor third. So it's at minor third. Something is really still off on the tuning. Boy, the temperature is just doing it. Okay, so the way we can think about this is, and you've heard this, the main one that we use is, it looks like it's the A form, right? So, you know, good time rock and roll. You know, that's the Stones, right? So that's essentially going from that A form, but we're really kind of using it, I hate to say this, but we're using it kind of as a G. Like if you look in the open G, it's really sort of, right? It's going from the G to the C chord. But we're only using a few of the strings. Okay? And that's sort of the classic move that everybody has, where they go to, where you go to that D chord from an A to a D, right? Which is the 1 chord to the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that works for any, you know, you can bar it, and it sounds great. So, you know, we've all heard that sort of thing before. In songs, you know, it's all over the place, right? If I take off the, if I turn it down a little bit. You know, and Free Ride and all kinds of Stone songs as well. Okay, so then there's there's a few versions of this. This bar chord is really common, or this chord is really common. So for example, you could do, instead of playing this D chord, you could play a minor version, right? You could play the 2, so A to a B minor, which is similar. But instead of playing a B minor, just play this chord, just play this note. You can play around with all these notes, right? And I'm sure you recognize this song. Wait a second, how's it go? Right, that kind of stuff. You know, so that's Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and we're using sort of just a different hammer on, right? We're hammering on, sometimes we're playing it both. So that's that version. So those are great for the G chord, for the G shape. And then if we want to use, let's use the, here's another common one, is to use the A shape, but to then hammer onto the sus chord. So and all these things give you a different sound, a slightly different sound, right? Right, that kind of thing. So you've heard that. Let's see, what else? If you go through all of these different shapes, right, we went through the G, and we went through the A, those are both useful. The C shape is a little less useful. You've got this, right, like the open D. But that works in any. So the idea is you take all these different cage shapes, right, and you just find, like, what are some hammer-ons that really kind of work. And a lot of times you'll find from going to the 1, like that one goes from the D shape, that one takes the D shape and does the E shape. That kind of works, right? It works great in D. Because you can use that open D. So, but that works for the D shape. That's a great one. And again, it's going from the 1 to the 4 chord, or parts of it. That's just using the sus4. So all these things work. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of things for the E shape that people don't talk about too much. So we all know, so I'll use the E shape for an A chord here. We all know this one, right? It's the scourge of our hands, right? Because we're doing So there's that one. But to get a fuller sound, you can do this. If you play the 3rd there, you're going from an A to essentially a D chord. But that's kind of a stretch because what you're doing is you're playing on the E string, you're playing on the A string up here, you're blocking the D, and you're playing the G string right there. And that's hard for a lot of people. It takes some stretch for sure. It sounds a little bit different than, you know, right? So, I mean, you can always, if you wanted to, you could always play just a couple of notes here. But it's hard to do that. I find it's hard to do that. So there's a trick that you can use, and it's going to work actually for both for the A and for the E. And the trick is really simple. I used to use it in bars all the time. And that is a bar trick, barroom trick. So if you play a D, we're just going to drop D tune this. Now, of course, you can tune to open D, but that defeats the purpose because you've got to retune a lot of strings. And unless you have a second guitar, that's fine. But what you've done is you've made this into this. Check it out. And so you can get that sound, which sounds really cool. That's the full sound that you want, right? The full to get that B in there, or it's actually an A. And what you've done is you haven't screwed up the whole guitar, so you can still play most chords. You just drop that D. Another trick, I'm going to tune this back up to E. For rhythm, another trick for rhythm that works great is you can take the A string and tune it down to a G. And so now, instead of just playing the D, G, and B strings, now you can play the A string too, and it just gives it a fuller sound. And you don't have to tune all the rest of the stuff. Like you don't have to tune the E down to D, and you don't have to tune the top E down to D. And the advantage of that, let me show you the advantage of that. I'm going to play the same thing, which is obviously was based on hot legs, right? So I'll play the same thing, and now you'll see I can go from the lead into the rhythm that sounds right really easily. And I forget, I changed the chords a little bit, so I forget what I changed the chords to, but anyway. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this. That flavor that you want, and it has that pull-off. You know, and yet you still haven't sacrificed any of the being able to play lead. You can still play most of the stuff because most lead happens on the higher on the treble strings. So You know, it's a great little trick because you only have to tune one string and you can easily tune it right back. And be ready for the next song. Right? So there we go. Anyway, just some rhythm tricks. Look for how you can go to that 4 chord from the 1 and use different cage shapes. And just play around with that, and you'll find like so many different good time rock and roll sounds from that, you know. You know, that kind of stuff. It's all over the place. All right, let's play a little bit of lead, because good time rock and roll, there's lots of different sounds to it. So one of my favorites, let's go back to the other camera. I kind of like that one better. Except it's not on now. What's going on? There we go. I think this one looks better. One of my favorites to play good time rock and roll is Joe Walsh. So let's play a little Joe Walsh style, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on afterward. If you have a chord with the 7th, 5th, and 3rd, can it be from the rootless inversion? I'm not sure what the rootless inversion is, but anyway, you can play a rootless chord, sure, at any time. In blues rock, you can play it on any chord. You can play a rootless chord. Okay. So let's do. I think this is an A. So we'll see. Let me see if is a guitar too loud? Not loud enough? We'll turn the backing track up just a bit on this one. Okay, let's try it again. Here we go. Little Joe Walsh sort of style. So what's going on there? You know, most of good time rock and roll is a lot of blues, right? So in this case, we're playing the blues, but we're not playing it straight. We're not playing a basic 12-bar blues. We're basically playing a 1, and it just goes straight to the 4. So far it's normal, right? Normal blues. We're playing blues in A, normal blues, 4 bars of A, then it goes to D for 2 bars, right? And then it just goes to E for 2 bars. Then back to A, and it repeats it again. So it's basically an 8-bar blues form. And so it's a little bit different than just playing the blues. And one of the things of good time rock and roll, as opposed to, I don't know, not bad time rock and roll, but sort of like a rougher sort of sound, is that good time rock and roll relies more on the chords themselves. So if we're playing an A7 chord, whatever that is, whether you're playing it without a root or not, which I love playing chords without roots, for sure. There's an A7 without a root. Sounds great. So if you play these chords, you're playing them with major thirds. And sort of the good time rock and roll is going to emphasize that. Now, one way that that manifests itself is instead of playing like over this, I'll demonstrate. So what I'll do is I'll play, let me play using the minor pentatonic. I'll use the minor pentatonic. Okay, now we're talking scales. I don't like, I don't like to do that, but I'm going to talk about it. So I'll use the minor pentatonic, and you'll see it has a rougher sound, right? So let's just do that, and I'll show how it manifests itself in your playing. Nothing terrible about that, but it doesn't particularly sound like Joe Walsh or like good time rock and roll. And one of the reasons is you're not emphasizing that third of the chord on the A or on the D or on the E. Because, at least for the minor pentatonic, you don't have it in that scale, right? Let's go close for a second. You don't have it in that scale. So, so you don't have it. Now, you can, of course, play the major pentatonic. And that's where that comes in, right? In the minor pentatonic, when you play your bread and butter position, the blues box position, right? When you bend on your butter bend, that bends to this E, right? Which is the 5 of the A chord. 1, 3, 5. You're bending to the 5. That kind of makes sense, right? Power chord. Okay. But when you bend from here, from the bread and butter of the A major pentatonic, again, the major pentatonic's box position, right? That main box position that we all know and love. When you bend here, you're bending here to the C sharp, which is the 3rd of the A chord. So it sounds sweeter. That 3rd sounds sweeter than the 5th. It's that simple. It really is that simple in terms of how it manifests itself. So we're going to emphasize the 3rds of the chords, and that usually means we're going to play a little bit more by the chord. So you'll hear me emphasizing the chords as they're playing, as Joe Walsh did as well. So we'll start it again. We'll start it again, and I'll just play a little bit. That's emphasizing the 3rd of the chord, or just emphasizing the chord changes, right? So I'm playing. That's the A major pentatonic over the A, over the D. I'm playing something based out of a D chord. Over the E, play something based over that E chord. So I am changing the scales that I play as I'm playing this. You don't have to. I could just play the A major pentatonic, but you'll find that that sort of has no edge. So if you decide to just stick with one sort of scale, when you try to do it A major pentatonic, it falls a little bit flat when you get to the other chords. So what I would say is, one other way of remedying the best way to remedy this is just to learn to play by the chords if you can. Now, if you can't, or if you find that difficult, let me show you a different way. One way is to play over the A, or over the 1 chord, play the major pentatonic. Over the 4 chord, play the minor pentatonic, the A minor pentatonic. So check it out. So I'll do that. I'll just do that now. So. On the 1 chord, on the A, you can play the major pentatonic. On the 4 chord, you play the A minor pentatonic. And then on the 5 chord, when you go to, in this case, the E, you can do either one. I particularly like going back to the major pentatonic. But again, you can always play by the chords anyway. Okay. Yes, good time rock and roll is always major stuff. You don't hear good time rock and roll minor. At least I don't recall any stuff that's like good time rock and roll that's really sort of based on minor chords. Let's do another one. Another one of my favorite bands that does some good time rock and roll and some not so good time rock and roll, but are the jam bands. So the jam bands do a lot of good time rock and roll. I'm talking, obviously Grateful Dead, but the Allman Brothers, Skinner really wasn't a jam band, but they had a similar sort of style, Southern rock, right? So let's do a little bit of that. And some of that emphasizes not just pentatonics, but some other notes that are pretty neat. Yeah, that's right. Yes, Richard Westelman, yes. It's playing a dominant 7 without the root is the same as playing a diminished triad. That is 100% true. That's great. That's right. And so then you can use the which works great. A lot of times I'll be playing an A. It's a great way to transition to D because it makes it really tense. So it's a great way to transition to the D chord. If I'm playing in the A, play a minor third up, another minor third up, and you're always going to be a half step away from the D. So our brains love half steps. They love that half step dissonance when you resolve it. It goes, our brains just love that. So if you can be a half step away and then resolve, our brains love it. So that's why that works so well. Going to that 4 chord. So that's a great trick. Okay, so this time we're going to play a little bit, we'll play a little Allman Brothers sort of thing here. Yeah. Really love that kind of stuff. And of course, you know, we can use the, of course, we can use, you know, whatever. We can use the major scale, right? Or the major pentatonic. But what Dickie Betts did, and you know, that's based, obviously, that's a Melissa sounding thing that we just did. And I was trying to use, a Telecaster's not perfect with this, but I was trying to use some of that, you know, that kind of stuff with the volume knob, as Dickie does. But one of the things that Dickie did was, it makes sense, is he often put into the major pentatonic, he often put that fourth in there. And there's that fourth of good time rock and roll again. So in E, right, in E, the fourth is A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 chord is A. So we could have played that progression was kind of like E. Very common using those ringing tones. We've got an E, we've got an F sharp minor, which I'm playing in kind of a weird way, right? F sharp minor. We've got an A majory type of thing. You can play it like this, which is a sixth. You could play it like this, which is a sixth with an added ninth, or which is a major with an added ninth. And we've got a B, we can play in a number of different ways. I like playing an A with a B bass. Sounds great, but so that's the sort of thing that we've got going here. And because we've got the 4 chord in, Good Time Rock and Roll says I'm going to emphasize that 4. That 4 is going to be a cool thing. And Dickie will add in, or he's gone now, but he would add in that A into the major pentatonic scale. So you hear Dickie playing it. You know, and it's, think about it, we're playing the E, then the A, right? If we're playing that, that sounds like a Stones song again, right? But that's all we're doing, is we're adding that in. Now, it's not an open E tune. I wouldn't play this in open E because then you lose a lot of the flavor that you're doing on some of these chords. But, I mean, I suppose you could. You got to find something for that 2 chord, though. It's going to sound good. And then if you tune an open E, then all your soloing is going to be different too. Anything that you've ever learned about soloing, if you do know a scale or something, you got to throw that out the window. So that's one of the reasons why, especially if you're playing live, you're playing in a blues jam or something like that, you want to find things that you can do without having to retune the guitar, or at most to retune one string. At least that's what I find, because otherwise nobody's going to wait for you to retune your guitar if you're playing at an open mic or jam, like or a blues jam or something like that. So, you know, this idea of retuning one string is pretty good. Oh, yes, I meant to do something here. If you can bear with me, I'm going to be back in a second. I'm getting some static here, and I'm going to show you maybe an even more useful trick. This is not the trick that I like the most, but I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. So a lot of you are Strat players and Tele players, and if you play in northern climates in the summer, or in the winter, I mean, it's super dry here. And so you build up a lot of electrostatic. Maybe if you're playing the west, I see, faster Macker. Yeah, and there are some things where it's like, you know, a piece like Little Martha, that's in, I think that's in open E. Dwayne played it in open E. That's, you know, it's a performance piece. That works. It's not sort of like a thing, whatever. Okay, anyway, I've got some static on here that I can hear. Yeah, there we go. See that? And I haven't yet had the time. There's a great way to fix it forever. And people don't tell you about this, but you take a little piece of tin foil and you put it, you undo the control plate, and you slip it under the, it has to be a strip that's about this long. And you slip it under here, and you put it into, you screw it into the control plate underneath. So you have to pull up the control plate, slide it under the pick guard, and then do that. And then you'll be able to ground yourself easily. And that's good. But if you don't, and you have to do it quickly, you just take a dryer sheet, and this works temporarily. The other one works permanently. But you just take a dryer sheet. This is a fairly new guitar, so I haven't done this yet. You take a dryer sheet and you just do this. And it's amazing. You get rid of the static. It goes away for a while, a week or so. And now there's none. So I just realized I've got plastic on here too. So, you know, the cellophane stuff. And I left the door open. Ugh. I'm going to get complaints if I don't close it. Okay. Anyway, okay, Little Martha. Yeah, you know, you're not going to play Little Martha at a blues jam, I guess. Yeah, Little Martha is in open E. Now, I tune that one to open, when I play Little Martha, I tune it to open D because I have this real fear of tuning up my acoustics and, you know, hurting them. So putting too much strain on the guitar. So I tune it to open D and then I capo on the 2nd fret. And that gives me the same as open E. So I like to tune down. I never like to tune up to open E, those sorts of things. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's do another one. Any questions or thoughts? Any questions or thoughts? Let's do another one. And oh, here's one of my favorites. Another one of mine is hopefully you've seen this. John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band. They did this. There was this awful movie. There was this decent movie called Eddie and the Cruisers, and then it did well enough, so they did a remake about 7 years later that was absolutely terrible. And it was called Eddie and the Cruisers, Eddie Lives. But there was one great song in it, and it's called Garden of Eden. And this is kind of based on that. Gary Gramellini just killed it in that. And I'm going to see if I can play something like that. But you'll see, it's same as Good Time Rock and Roll. We'll try and play the chords first. Let me just the backing track to get the right volume here. Oh yeah, right. That's another thing. A lot of good time rock and roll, there's stops. Okay, section. So, yeah, so I wanted to make that point. So there's a lot of, like Hot Legs, right? Rod Stewart, there's a lot of stops where the whole band stops or most of the band stops and the guitar just keeps going on a little solo break or whatever. So Gary Gramellini played some great stuff on that. And again, with good time rock and roll, you can rely on a scale, but it's really helpful to be able to play chord by chord. And so I'm going to show you a little bit. I don't know if I can repeat the whole thing, but I'll do the best I can on this. I'll try and show a little bit about what Gramellini played on this, and we'll do it. We'll do it. Now he played it on a Strat. That's for T-Bone. He played it on a Strat. Okay, let's do it again. Okay. Okay, I really dig that solo. I dig what he did on it. But the key thing of it is you're playing chord by chord. So you're really being you're not just playing a scale. I mean, sometimes you're playing like a scale, like you can play something like that, which is essentially a minor pentatonic lick, or that's a lick out of a scale. But you're organizing yourself by moving along chords. And you can hear a lot of chord licks that are in there. So for example, this right here, it's really just playing out of this E position. That's for the C. And then for the F, you just move up to that position. Sorry. You know, and then for the G, that's playing out of this A position. So those are just licks that are coming out of chords. And in fact, in the beginning, if you're used to that one, there's a really cool beginning where he just plays himself. It goes something like this. I don't know if I can play this, but it goes something like this. starts the song. But that is just playing, and there's a piano that's going in back of it, but otherwise it's a clean, it's just a guitar solo alone. And it's just going from a C, it's just blues, right? So it's C, F, G, and then back to C. And everything he's doing is based out of this E shape, right? Now you might say, you know, what scales are involved there? I don't know. There's major pentatonic, there's minor pentatonic, there's C mixolydian. There's all these different scales that are involved, but basically it's all based on this chord shape, right? Yeah, it's just a 1-4-5. That's all it is, Willie. And it's even simpler than that, because it's even simpler than 1-4-5. It's 1-4-5 using that E shape every time. So over here, going to the F. Right? That's all that is. It's using the same ideas over F. And now for G, again, it's just using that G. Now here, he does this ascending thing, you know, based on a couple of different chord shapes. Here's a G shape. Now we're back to the E shape. Those are just licks based out of that E shape. So really, basically, everything is out of that E-shaped chord. And he gets a lot out of it. It sounds really cool, and he gets a lot out of it. I've watched a few things with Tommy Castro, one of my favorite blues players. And if you don't know Tommy Castro, man, you got to know Tommy Castro. He's great. And but so much of what he does is out of that bread and butter E-shaped position. And it's amazing how many different sounds he can get on it. You know? Are triads bits of arpeggios? They can be. I mean, triads are more basic than arpeggios, so I'd say arpeggios are, you know, arpeggios can be different triads. I don't know. I mean, arpeggios can involve notes that are not part of triads too. So, not exactly sure what you're saying, but you know, you can play. You know, triad just means you know it's three notes that make up a chord, right? And there's all sorts of different triads. The most common are the major triad, right, and the minor triad. Those are the most common. You can have triads. Now, this is what was confusing to me. You can have triads that have more than 3 notes in them. No, more than 3 strings playing at the same time, I'll put it that way, right? So for example, let me show you quickly. So this right here is a triad. Let me do it down here. There's a G. This is a triad, even though I'm playing 6 strings, because G is represented 3 times. There's a G, there's a G, and there's a G. And there's a B in there, and there's another B, and there's a D. There's only 1 D. So there's really only 3 notes, even though I'm hitting 6 strings. So technically that's a triad. But most of us don't think of triads that way. Most of us think of triads as 3-note chords. So that could be a triad right there. And if you're thinking something like this, certainly there are triads that are part of that arpeggio This, right, for example, is a triad, a G triad, and it's part of this arpeggio. But if I played a G6 arpeggio, right? You know, something like that, that would involve a 6th chord, which is not, or that's actually a 13th, but whatever. I'm not gonna argue about that sort of thing. It has that 6th in there, and that's not part of a triad. So it's part of a E minor triad, but that's probably deeper than you wanted. They're just two different things. So an arpeggio is, you're playing through different chords. You're playing the notes of the chord. That's what an arpeggio is. That chord does not have to be a triad, but you're onto something. Les Paul Slayer, because triads make up so many other chords. I'm going to give you, for example, I just gave you, for example, with that E minor, but I'm going to give you another one. So let's play an A minor triad. Everybody knows that A minor triad. Right? We know that one. A minor. Okay, I'm going to add a note onto it. I'm going to add this F. Ooh, that gives me an F major 7 chord. So an F major 7 triad has an A minor triad in it, or F major 7 arpeggio. Sorry about that, didn't mean to confuse. F major 7 arpeggio has an A minor triad in it, which is pretty interesting. It turns out not everything works that way, but triads are a great key to understanding many other things on the fretboard. Being able to see triads and understand them, put them together. All right. Anyway, it's a big thing. Rock and roll versus jazz. Well, I don't know. You know, if you consider Led Zeppelin jazz, I guess, right? Here's Led Zeppelin, A minor. We won't talk about the chord names for a while. D major, and then F major 7. There's an F major 7 there. Rain Song has a bunch of strange chords. And I'll tell you what, you know, you can think of all of this stuff as triad stuff. And a lot of the stuff that we were playing, getting back to the beginning, with Joe Walsh, right, when we were playing that Joe Walsh style, a lot of it is using, at least for me, is when I want to navigate, move up the fretboard, if I'm trying to get an idea and I'm saying, okay, I want to get into A and I want to play it somewhere else, I can see this A triad really quickly, and this A triad really quickly, and this one really quickly. So I use triads to move around. I don't use scale shapes to move around. And I don't use my feelings either. I mean, of course I do. I use my ear and all that, which I'm not sure what feelings mean. Spider sense or something. But people, yeah, you play by feel, man. Okay. Rain Song can be played in the alternate tuning. I think the way Page played it, it is. Yep. Okay, let's do another one, and let's get into you know, good time rock and roll can be heavy too. So let us, as the rabbit said, use a little bit heavier guitar. Telecasters are good, but when we're doing Led Zeppelin, I know Led Zeppelin 1 was played on the Telecaster. I get that, but let's move to the Les Paul, and I'll put more Paul on it here. Okay, let's put some more Paul on it and end with some Led Zeppelin. Ooh, yeah, see, I'm out of tune too. Let me tune up here. Okay. Okay, let's go. Yeah, all right. So let's play a Zeppelin style. Let's play a Zeppelin style good time rock and roll. How about that? Let's do that. And I'll tell you what we're doing here and why this is just the best. Not just this, but you know, good time rock and roll, it's the best because of this sort of stuff. Okay, so kind of bad noodling there. But the cool thing about it is, like, good time rock and roll, you can play what you want. You can play the major pentatonic. You know, you can play the minor pentatonic. And everything in between, right? You can play chord tones if you want. You can play scale tones if you want. You can play with sausage fingers like I'm doing right now. Hey, MK, you can wind it back and get the rhythm part. We did the rhythm part earlier. You can wind it back and get that. So you can play anything in between, right? And you can play lots of open notes. It all sounds good. You can play the correct scale, like the E mixolydian. You can play the incorrect scale, like the E Dorian. As long as you land in the right place, it's going to sound cool. It's going to sound fine, right? You can play by chord, you can play by the scale. It's all good because we're used to hearing all that stuff mixed together in a big stew, and that's what having a good time with this stuff is all about. Okay, I want to remind you that if you are interested in making a breakthrough with your blues, 30-day intensive program. We're doing a 30-day workshop. It's coming up. Sometime in February we'll start it. Like to do it in the winter in the northern climates because it's when a lot of us have, we don't have a lot going on. Anyway, I do it once a year and I take 15 people in. We do 30 days. It's intensive and we do all sorts of things. We don't just do scales. No. We don't just do, it's a lot about, like the blues is mostly about phrasing and timing. But we also do listening, and there's discussions multiple times. There's individual attention that you get from me. Feedback, you're encouraged to do the lessons, turn them in, and you'll get feedback on anything that you do. If you record something, post it, you get feedback on that. So if you're interested in that, if that's something that interests you, there is a link in the description of this live stream. And you'll just get on the mailing list. That's all it does. It just puts you on the mailing list. It doesn't enroll you into anything, doesn't commit you into anything. There is a cost associated with it, but because it's a lot of work on my part. But I do put in a lot of work into this. If you want to do that, I can help you do that. Okay, 30 days. That's what it is. Now, I'm not going to make any bones. It's a lot of work if you want to do it in 30 days. But if you want to take a few months, you still have it. You still have it available to you. Okay? It's going to be available as a course only, too. For those of you who let's just like, well, I don't want the personal touch. I'm good without it. It's going to be available that way, too. But only 15 people will be allowed to get into the full workshop because I can't give the full attention to any more than that. Okay. Thank you, Trip. Thank you. Yeah, you can do shredding if you want, right? You can do shredding even on Good Time Rock and Roll. I mean, look, Van Halen. Van Halen's a shredder, right? When he plays something like... when he does stuff like that, whatever he's doing. Van Halen did a lot of Good Time Rock and Roll. Ice Cream Man. If that isn't Good Time Rock and Roll, I don't know what is. And he shreds on that. I can't play that fast right now without warming up a lot. That kind of stuff. Well, he would do that kind of stuff. But anyway. Shredding, yes. Got to get into the mood. What is better, learning songs or jamming? Well, I don't know. Why can't you do both? Do you mean what's better for your playing? It depends on what your goals are. If you want to be able to jam with others, if you want to be able to improvise, I value improvising very highly. I also value composition very highly. So learning songs, what I don't value as highly as perhaps some people do is learning songs exactly, like it's a recital piece. I think it's good to learn what other people have done. I think it's helpful because especially if you learn it with the intent of inculcating it, ooh, big word, into your play, right? If you put it into your own play, it doesn't mean you're going to play their licks. What it means is you're going to play their style. You're going to try and get their style in there. So, you know, when I'm playing like a Joe Walsh sort of sound when I'm You know, when I'm playing those sorts of licks, I'm not really trying to play Joe Walsh's licks in particular. I don't know if he played those licks. I'm just trying to get his sound. But learning one or two of his solos can help you get that, right? Where you might not have thought about, like, what's the timing on that. So it can be helpful for sure, definitely. You know, for blues, it helps a lot for me to listen to a player and do that, and then try and play my own stuff. But I mean, blues is a great example, right? So I would never play note for note anything that like a B.B. King solo or something like that. I guess I've done a couple Stevie Ray Vaughan just because people want it that way. But you know, honestly, I'm just not into it. I can't imagine playing blues and playing the same thing every time. But I mean, having said that, the thing that I did earlier, where I played Garden of Eden, right, where I played the that right there is pretty much an exact line that Gary Gramellini played. And so I did learn that. A long time ago, I learned, somebody called that the train. I think maybe it was Tripp. Now, again, I don't know if that was the fingering because I lifted it from the record. So I don't even know if that's the right notes. But I learned that, and that's something exactly that Gary Gramellini played. I don't think I would ever play that in my own solos, but now I know the you know, I can incorporate that sort of style in there, and that sort of lick has become part of what I do now. So it's a good balance. I think it's a good balance. It's good to learn some real songs, because like somebody's going to ask you, how do you play, you know, Walk This Way, right? And you know, it's good to know how to do that. And if you get on stage and somebody's jamming to that, they don't want to hear you say, okay, well, it's just E and you're playing instead of you know, whatever it is. That I should play it better, but that's basically it. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a good balance. It's a good balance. Great question, though. Did I create the backing tracks? Most of them I did. Some of them I bought. I either buy them or create them, but most of them were created. Yeah. One guy I like, his backing tracks is Elevated. I think it's called Elevated Backing Tracks. Makes good backing tracks. Not a lot of good time rock and roll, though. I'll tell you that. So I don't think we did any of his today. There's another guy who creates free music Dan Leibovitz, and I like his stuff. So he's the one who created that Melissa backing track. Yeah. Yeah. To faster Mac faster Macker. I don't know how to say it, but by the way, oh, this neck feels very comfortable to me too. It's not skinny like those Fenders. I'm still trying to get used to Fender necks, but to me, a nice fat Gibson. This is an Epiphone, but a nice fatter neck works for me. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, one of the things I used to do is just turn on a radio. I mean, who listens to radio anymore? But you can turn on Spotify or whatever it is that you use to listen. Whatever. I play randomly for my own stuff, not my own record collection. But and then just try and play along with what comes on the radio, and try and flip around with minimal pedals. Flip around, try and get a good sound, right? Flip around on here. So that means you can't use too many pedals, and then try and find something that sounds good that you can play, either rhythm or lead or both. And I still remember doing that when I was a kid, sitting in front of MTV, and a song would come on, and after a while you get pretty good at it, and you recognize the patterns that are coming up. I always recognize when Michael Stanley Band's "She Don't Love You Like I Love You" would come on. Still remember that stuff. I can't believe it. I don't know if it's in the key of C, but anyway, I just played it in C. But stuff like that would come up, and you're trying to imitate what's going on, and you're just using your ears. That is hugely helpful, because then you can go up in any jam and you can play little things, that are going to sound good. Yeah, and it can be hugely helpful. And it can also, it's so good for your ears to pick up on the things that are different about a song, too. Like in that Sweet Melissa thing, which was called Sweet Release, by the way. So guys, obviously, the one that I did, right, the one that was by Dan Leibovitz. He wrote that one. He wrote that and did that music, which is free. It's freely available. But there's a thing where it changes the key at the end, where I think it's in E, but then it goes to D. It plays out of key a little bit, and then to get back to E. So it goes a little bit out of the key to get back in, and you start to notice that sort of thing. I'll give you an example. Here's another one, Dan Leibovitz. Like his stuff. So this is called Come and Get It. Sounds like, well, now it doesn't, but it sounded like Walk This Way, right? Gets you to start thinking, like, what is that? Okay, we're vamping on a C chord. I figured that out. Sounds like a G. Went up a minor third. Then goes back, right? So when you start to hear those patterns, you start to figure out things that you can play over them as well. and it's good. Right? Okay, so I played that a couple times before, but a lot of that is just by ear, and that's a fun way to do things, like take a random backing track. This is another thing, like good elevated jam tracks. Guy's good. So you buy one of his things that has like 20 of them. Don't look at the key. Just click on it and just start playing. And just try and figure it out. Don't look at the, like it's like, oh, this is a jam, sultry jam in E major, sultry jam in D Dorian, whatever. Don't look at that. Don't look at the title, just click, right? Or better yet, take the titles off of them, just like call them number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and you'll forget very quickly what they were. And then you'll just start playing, right? Yeah, and it's just like, you'll figure it out. It's just that it's better than being told, right? But it's also more work. It takes you a lot longer, right? Because you're going to play some really sour notes for a while. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Let me illustrate that one more time. Let's do this again, one more time, and then I got to get going after this. But let's try this. So okay. Okay, so here's one. I'm sure you've heard it before if you've tuned into this live stream before. And let me talk directly to the camera. I'll talk directly to the camera because it's irking me. There we go. Okay, so now I can look directly at you because the camera's right here as opposed to there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this and we're going to listen to it and we're going to try and figure it out. Okay? Now, I don't usually do this, but this is not good time rock and roll. So if you're just tuning in for good time rock and roll, head back, all right? Go back to the beginning. Okay. Okay, so we're just listening to it. Now I don't have perfect pitch, so I can't tell you whether this is D sharp or B flat. Figure it out. Sounds good, right? That's an A note. So this is going from an A. Right there. So we figured out the beginning part is just A, and you know, it's using some open stuff. If you want to figure out exactly, you can figure out what those chords were. But for me, that's a distraction because I don't have to play exactly the flavor. And here's kind of what I was getting at. If I'm going to learn this, first of all, it's a backing track. So what do I care about learning a backing track exactly for? I just want to get the flavor. Maybe it's an E minor, or an, or a C sharp minor 7 flat 5. I don't really care. It doesn't sound like that to me, but maybe it is. But playing that G, A to a G, D, and an A. That's basically what it is in triads. Good to know triads, right? And again, it's probably keeping that A. It's probably what it is, just keeping that A in the bass. Okay, but then we heard it shift a little bit. We heard the tonality shift. Let's listen. Thank you. Still going through it. It got darker, right? So darker, I associate with minor chords. So it went dum, bum, bum. That's what I heard. That's what I heard. Okay, so let's try and figure out what that was. But those were the notes I thought I heard. Let's see if I can play it again. If I got it right. I get these wrong sometimes. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me. How did I know? Oh my gosh, how did I anticipate that that was going to come? Well, I've heard this backing track before, but that progression I've learned is a very common one. So it's a flip to a minor. So the first one is... That's the first part. So it goes F, G, D minor. And it goes F, G, back to our A major. That happens so often. That chord progression where we're going 2 whole steps down, 1 whole step down, back to the tonic of back to the 1 chord that was original. That happens a lot. You'll hear that now. Once you start seeing it, once you figure it out, you're like, oh my God, that happened here, and it happened here, and it happened here. Happens a lot. So that's how I knew it. And so how does that inform our play? I don't know. In the beginning, I'm just playing over this A and this G and this D chord. And I heard some minor stuff in there. Then we can go back to that. So if I were going to handle that, I might do that. Now, that's the chord way of doing it. I also will just start noodling and playing scales. But when my ear picks up that, oh, that major scale isn't good, the same major scale isn't going to work, what I'll often do is just flip to the minor of the same thing. And that can be helpful too. But again, I'm letting my ears guide me, because when I hit a wrong note, they'll go, ooh, okay, that wasn't right, but maybe I need to adjust next time. It's always helpful to know the chords, because you can always just play over the chords. So I'll play over the chords this time. You'll hear what happens. Okay, so it's A, G, and D, and back to A. very often what I'll try and do is when I come back on that, and I messed up again, I messed up twice, but when I come back to the chord that I know is supposed to set the tonality again, I'll play the third of that chord. I know that's theoretical stuff, but with an A, it's a C sharp. And it signals that you're back to the major again. And it makes it kind of nice. I'll try and do it one more time, and you'll see. I'll have to, let me just start from the beginning again. This will be the last time, I promise. So playing that third, emphasizing, that's the difference between that major and that minor, right? And that major. F is, that F chord is very characteristic of an A minor, right? And in fact, you know this because we played Stairway to Heaven as A minor, G major, and F, right? Major. We know it's F major is associated with an A minor chord. So if you're anticipating that, you play that major third, everybody hears it. Everybody hears it. And if the rest of the band isn't doing it, it sounds bad. That's the danger. Get all sorts of stuff come back. If the rest of the band isn't doing that, that sounds bad. It sounds like a really sour note. But if the rest of the band is doing that and it's on the transition, it's killer. It sounds killer. Perfect. Here's another perfect example of that. Is this one. That note right there is the third of a G sharp chord. And a chord progression that the cars play on that's just what I needed, right? That chord progression at G sharp is not the right chord for E major. So that's the chord progression. They do that twice. So when Elliot Easton plays, all that's fine, but then on that G chord, he plays, he lands on that C, which is really, I'm going to drive the theory people crazy and call it a C. If you're a theory person, that's a B sharp. B sharp and C are the same note. But anyway, if you're a theory person, that's a B sharp. But whatever. The point is that that's a very recognizable line in the solo because of that chord progression forces it to be. And so if you can anticipate that thing, it helps. Of course, that has nothing to do with playing by ear, but you got to hear it before you can play it. Okay, anyway, cool stuff. Um, all right, good time rock and roll. We'll see you in February. We'll see you in February. Again, one last thing. If you're interested in the blues workshop, it's pretty intense for sure. You can sign up. It's pretty intense if you want to do it with me, with the workshop, and I give you feedback and all that kind of stuff. Limited to 15 people. You want to be on the notify list, you can click there. If you want to just, you can also get it as a standalone course. That's fine too. And if you're a member, you get it. By the way, if you're a member, you get it. You get the course. You don't get the workshop, but you get the course. You don't get the, you know, the intense feedback and stuff like that. But from me, but you get a discount on that too. So anyway, that's it. All right, we'll see you in February, folks. Good to see you all, and yeah, we'll see you in February. Take care.